The number my aunt said stopped me cold. $3,000 every month for 4 years. I did the math without meaning to. $144,000. I sat there with my fork halfway to my plate and I could not move. "Sweetheart," my aunt said, and her voice was careful in a way that made my stomach drop further. "You didn't know, did you?" It wasn't a question. I should back up. My name is Lydia. I'm 28 years old. I work as a licensed occupational therapist at a pediatric clinic in Phoenix, which sounds more glamorous than it is. Mostly I spend my days helping 7-year-olds learn how to hold pencils and regulate their nervous systems, and I love it, but it does not make me rich. I drive a 2017 Honda Civic with 94,000 miles on it. I split a 2-bedroom apartment with a coworker named Paige because I cannot afford to live alone. I have about 1,000 in savings, which I have been very proud of because 18 months ago I had nothing. My grandmother, Nana, we've always called her, turned 79 this past April. She lives alone in Scottsdale in the house she and my grandfather shared for 41 years before he passed. My grandfather was an electrical contractor who built his business from nothing starting in the 1970s. He was not flashy about it. He drove a Ford pickup until it died. He wore the same Timex watch for 30 years. But when he died 6 years ago, he left my grandmother very comfortable, and he left a trust for his grandchildren. My brother, my cousin, and me. I knew about the trust in a vague, theoretical way. My parents had always mentioned it as something in the distance. When you're older. When the time is right. Grandpa wanted you to have it when you really needed it. They managed the details on my grandmother's behalf because she'd asked them to. She told me herself that numbers gave her a headache and she trusted my parents completely. I trusted them too. For a long time. That's the part that's hardest to say out loud. The dinner was supposed to be a birthday celebration. Late, because my aunt had been traveling for work and we'd pushed it 2 weeks. Just family. My parents, my brother, my aunt, my grandmother, and me. My aunt had flown in from Portland specifically for this. My aunt is my mother's older sister. They have never been close, not really, but they are cordial in that way that some sisters are. Polite, surface level, careful around the edges. My aunt has always been a little formal with me. She remembers my birthday. She sends Christmas cards with a real note inside. She is the kind of person who says what she means and does not apologize for it, which I used to find a little cold and now understand is just honesty. We were at my grandmother's house. My grandmother had made her pot roast, which is a whole event. She starts it in the morning. It fills the whole house. It is the smell of every holiday I have ever had. My brother had brought wine. My mother had brought a cake from the bakery she likes. My father was telling a story about a client at his consulting firm, and everyone was laughing, and it felt like a normal Sunday. Then my aunt asked me how my finances were doing. It was a strange question for the middle of dinner. I remember glancing at my mother, who had gone very still. "Fine," I said. "You know, clinic job doesn't pay a ton, but I'm managing. Are you saving anything?" I laughed a little, embarrassed. "A little. It's slow going." My aunt nodded. She reached down beside her chair. She'd brought a bag, I'd assumed it was a gift for Nana, and she set a folder on the table. "Lydia," she said, "your grandmother has been wiring $3,000 a month into an account in your name for the last 4 years. The table went quiet, the way rooms do in movies. That total, surreal silence where you can suddenly hear everything. The refrigerator humming. A car outside. My own pulse. "I'm sorry," I said. $3,000 a month," she said again. "Per the terms of your grandfather's trust, routed through a joint account your parents set up when you turned 21. I looked at my parents. My mother was looking at her plate. My father was looking at my aunt with an expression I had never seen on his face before. It took me a second to identify it. It was fear. "I haven't received any money," I said. I heard how stupid it sounded even as I said it. "I mean, not regularly. They've helped me out sometimes, like when my car needed work. But they gave you $800 last November," my aunt said. For your car. I know. It's in here. She tapped the folder. Your grandfather's trust has been dispersing $3,000 a month since you turned 24. In 4 years, that's $144,000 that was meant for you. My grandmother made a small sound. She was sitting at the head of the table and she was looking at my mother with an expression that broke my heart a little, not angry, just devastated. Like she was watching something she'd believed in crumble in real time. Margaret, my grandmother said. That's my mother's name. Is this true? My mother finally looked up. Mom, it's complicated. Is it true? My father put his hand on the table, flat, like he was steadying himself. We were managing it responsibly, he said. We've been covering Lydia's needs. You gave her $800, my aunt said. In 4 years. I want to tell you what it feels like to sit at a dinner table and discover that the people who raised you have been stealing from you for 4 years. But I'm not sure I have the words for it exactly. It's not like a fight. It's not like being accused of something or having someone betray a confidence. It's more like the floor becoming unreliable. Like you're standing on something you thought was solid, and you look down and realize you've been standing on a painting of a floor this whole time. I kept thinking about the last 4 years, the specific texture of those 4 years. I was 24 when this apparently started. I had just finished my master's program. I had $22,000 in student loan debt. I moved back home for 6 months because I couldn't afford first, last, and security on an entry-level OT salary. And my parents told me that was fine, that they wanted to help me get on my feet. I remember feeling grateful. I remember thinking I had good parents. When I got my job and moved out, they helped me with the deposit, $1,200, which they made clear was a loan. I paid it back in 4 months. I had a health scare 2 years ago. Nothing serious in the end. A cyst that turned out to be benign. But I needed an ultrasound and a follow-up biopsy, and my insurance had a high deductible. I asked my parents if I could borrow $600 to cover part of it. My father told me they were a little stretched that month and asked if I could put it on a credit card. I put it on a credit card. I have been putting things on a credit card for 4 years. I currently have $4,300 in credit card debt. I have been paying it down slowly, carefully, the way you do when you're trying to be responsible, and you think $1,100 in savings is something to be proud of. $144,000. That number kept bouncing around my skull like something trapped. Where did it go? I asked. My voice came out very flat. I was surprised by how calm I sounded. My father started to say something about investments. Don't, my aunt said, not loudly, just clearly. I have the records. She opened the folder. I couldn't see everything from where I was sitting, but I could see enough. Columns of figures, highlighted lines, what looked like bank statements with certain transactions circled in red pen. The money came in monthly, she said. A portion went toward the mortgage acceleration on your parents' house. A portion went to a renovation, the kitchen, I believe, and the primary bathroom. There were travel expenses, a car lease in 2023. That was a family car, my father said. Lydia used it too. Lydia used it to drive home for Thanksgiving once, my aunt said. She doesn't live with you. My brother had not said a single word since my aunt started talking. I looked at him. His face was complicated, not guilty, exactly, confused. He looked like he was doing the same math I was doing. Did you know? I asked him. No, he said, and I believed him. I still believe him. He looked as lost as I felt. My mother finally spoke. We were going to tell her, when she was more settled, when she had a better handle on managing money. I have a master's degree, I said. I manage a caseload of 32 patients. I've been managing my money very carefully for 4 years because I thought I didn't have very much of it. You've never been good with finances, Lydia. You know that. I don't know that, I said. You've told me that. There's a difference. The silence after that was different from the first silence. Heavier. My grandmother asked to see the folder. My aunt slid it to her. My grandmother put on the reading glasses she keeps on a chain around her neck, and she looked at the pages for a long time. She didn't say anything while she read. My father tried once to explain something, and she held up one finger without looking up, and he stopped. When she was done, she closed the folder and set her reading glasses on top of it and folded her hands on the table. "Harold set up that trust for the children," she said. "Harold was my grandfather. He talked about it the year before he got sick. He wanted each of them to have something real, something to start with, something so they wouldn't have to struggle the way we did when we were young." She paused. "He specifically asked me to make sure it got to them directly." "We were distributing it," my father started. "You were distributing it to yourselves," my grandmother said. Her voice was still quiet. "That was somehow worse?" My mother reached across the table toward her. "Mom, don't." My grandmother pulled her hands back into her lap. She looked at me. "Lydia, I owe you an apology. Your grandfather trusted me to protect this, and I trusted the wrong people to help me do it. That's on me. I'm sorry." I started crying then. Not dramatically. Just tears running down my face while I sat there trying to figure out what any of this meant for my life. My aunt had not come to dinner unprepared. I found this out over the next hour, as the dinner that wasn't a dinner continued in the wreckage of itself. She had been suspicious for over a year. She'd heard me mention once, casually, that I was saving up for a security deposit on a better apartment, and something about it had struck her as wrong. She knew what my grandfather's trust was supposed to be doing. She'd gotten power of attorney from my grandmother, with my grandmother's full knowledge and consent, 6 weeks before this dinner. She had retained a CPA who specialized in estate accounts. She had come to the table with everything she needed. "Why didn't you tell me ahead of time?" I asked her later, when my parents had gone to the living room and my brother was helping my grandmother with the dishes and we were briefly alone at the table. "Because I didn't know how your parents would react," she said, "and I wanted you to hear it for the first time in front of them, so there was no version of events they could give you later." I thought about that. "You were protecting the evidence. I was protecting you," she said. My father's reaction, once he understood that my aunt was not bluffing and had documentation of everything, moved through several phases. First, he tried to reframe it. They had been stewards of the money, responsible managers. They'd been protecting me from financial decisions I wasn't ready for. My aunt asked him to point to anything in my grandfather's trust documents that authorized them to make that determination. He couldn't. Then he tried to appeal to family. Did we really want to do this? Whatever this was, over money, was money worth destroying a family over? My aunt said the family had been damaged by what was done with the money, not by discussing it. Then he said something that I will not repeat here exactly. But the gist of it was that I had benefited from living in their home and from their support over the years, and that some portion of what they'd taken could reasonably be considered compensation for that. My grandmother, who had come back to the doorway of the kitchen, said, "That's your daughter, Roger." He didn't say anything after that for a while. My mother cried. Real tears, I think, not performance. I believe she had convinced herself over 4 years that what they were doing was acceptable, was temporary, was something they'd make right eventually. People are very good at convincing themselves. I know that. It doesn't change what they did, but I've thought about it a lot since, and I think that's where she was. She tried to hug me at one point, and I stepped back. Not meanly. I just wasn't there yet. I don't know if I'm there yet now. Here is what my aunt had arranged before she came to that dinner. She had worked with the CPA to document every disbursement from the trust account over 4 years. She had a demand letter prepared, not filed, just prepared, from an attorney who handles estate disputes. She had already spoken to my grandmother about the path forward, and she had, the week before, quietly moved the management of my grandfather's trust to a new account that my parents did not have access to. There was still money in the trust. My grandfather had been conservative and patient in his investing for 40 years, and what remained, even after 4 years of my parents' withdrawals, was still substantial. My aunt told me the number, and I had to ask her to repeat it. It was enough to pay off my student loans, enough to pay off my credit card, enough for a down payment on a small condo if I wanted one, enough, finally, to feel like I was standing on actual ground. "This is yours," my aunt said. "It's always been yours." We're just correcting the routing. My brother asked me on the drive home that night, we'd ridden together, whether I was okay. I don't know, I said, which was true. Are you going to press charges? I'd been thinking about that. The attorney my aunt retained had explained that what my parents did could constitute breach of fiduciary duty, possibly fraud, depending on how the DA wanted to look at it. There were options on the table. Nothing had been decided. I don't know that either, I said. We didn't talk much the rest of the drive. He dropped me off at my apartment and I sat in my parking lot for a while before I went inside. It was around 9:30. My neighbor's dog was barking at something. The air smelled like someone nearby was running a dryer. Normal. Everything around me was completely normal, and I was completely different from the person who had gotten in my car 5 hours earlier. I went upstairs. I sat on my couch. I did not turn on the television. I just sat there in the quiet and thought about 4 years of being careful. 4 years of putting medical bills on credit cards. 4 years of saying no to things. Trips with friends, a better apartment, a used piano I'd wanted for 2 years and told myself was a stupid indulgence. 4 years of being proud of $1,100 in savings. I thought about my grandfather, who wore the same watch for 30 years and drove his pickup until it died and built something so that his grandchildren wouldn't have to struggle. I thought about how much it would have mattered, done the way he intended it, how differently these 4 years might have looked. I thought about my parents, about who I'd believed they were. I am still thinking about all of it. Probably I will be for a long time. The practical things have started to move. My aunt is helping me navigate the trust transfer. I've had one conversation with the attorney, brief, informational, no decisions made. My credit card is paid off. I still have the Honda Civic with 94,000 miles on it. I'm not ready to think about what else is different yet. I keep approaching that from a distance. My parents called me twice in the week after the dinner. I didn't answer. I sent a text that said I needed time and I'd reach out when I was ready. My mother texted back, I love you. I'm sorry. My father did not respond at all. My grandmother called on a Wednesday morning. I answered that one. She told me she'd spent 53 years trusting that she understood the people around her and that she had been wrong about this, and that she was sorry that her mistake had cost me. She cried a little. I told her it wasn't her fault, which I believe. She told me my grandfather would have been furious, which made me almost smile. He would have, I said. He loved you so much, she said. He talked about all 3 of you. He wanted to give you a real start. I know, I said. And sitting there in my apartment with the cup of coffee going cold on the counter, I let myself feel that for a minute. Not the loss or the anger or the complicated grief of realizing your parents aren't who you thought they were. Just the original thing underneath all of it, that someone loved me enough to plan for my future, that it existed, that it still does. It was wired wrong for 4 years, but it's real. It was always real. I'm figuring out the rest. I've been sitting with this for a while now, trying to figure out what it actually taught me, not the legal part, not the money part, but the thing underneath all of it that I keep coming back to when it's quiet. My grandfather, Harold, spent his whole life making careful choices. He didn't do it because someone was watching or because he expected applause. He did it because he understood something I'm only starting to understand now, that how you treat the people who depend on you is who you actually are. Not who you say you are at dinner. Not who you are when things are easy. Who you are when no one's checking the account statements. My parents made a different choice. And I've spent a lot of time trying to understand how people get there. How 2 people who held my hand when I was small and came to my graduate school ceremony could also, quietly, for 4 years, take something that wasn't theirs. I don't think they woke up one morning and decided to steal from their daughter. I think it happened in increments. 1 month of, we'll pay it back. 1 renovation that felt justified. 1 year bleeding into the next, until the thing they were doing had become so normal to them that they'd built a whole internal story around why it was fine. That's the part that scares me most, honestly. Not the betrayal itself, but how invisible it can become to the person doing it, the way people can look straight at something wrong and see something reasonable instead. What my aunt did took a different kind of courage. She didn't have to get involved. She could have stayed comfortable and kept her relationship with her sister intact and let me keep living my careful, diminished life without ever knowing what I was missing. Instead, she spent 6 weeks getting her paperwork in order and then sat down at a birthday dinner and told the truth in front of everyone. She didn't do it dramatically. She didn't do it to win anything. She did it because she looked at the situation and decided that what was right mattered more than what was easy. I think about that a lot. The decision to act when acting costs you something. I've also been thinking about what 4 years of not knowing did to me, not just financially. Though paying off $4,300 in credit card debt last month felt like putting down something I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it had weight. But the way I moved through those 4 years, smaller than I needed to be, apologetic about wanting things, proud of savings that should have been a footnote, I had built an entire identity around being resourceful with very little, and some of that I'll keep. I don't think it hurt me to learn to be careful, but some of it was just a cage I didn't know I was in. The thing about integrity, in yourself, in the people you trust, is that its presence is invisible. You only notice it clearly when it's gone. My grandfather had it, and I didn't see it because I didn't have to. My aunt has it, and I almost missed that too. I'm not interested in becoming someone who trusts no one. That's not the lesson I'm taking from this. The lesson, if I had to name it, is simpler. Pay attention to what people do when no one's looking, to the gap between what someone says and what the records show, and to the quiet people in your life, the ones who show up without fanfare and do the right thing without being asked, because those are the ones worth knowing. My grandfather knew that. He tried to pass it forward. I'm going to try to deserve it.